Hello, everyone. Welcome to our little event. I'd like to ask you if you close your eyes for a few moments as I say this little prayer. Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us to engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to grow closer as a group, and nurture the bonds of community. Thank you. Amen.
Good morning. Rick May with the Hope Institute and We Care Partnerships Network. I want to welcome you all. I want to thank all the vendors for coming. And I really want to thank Shay and Don for all the hard work they've done to bring this thing all together. Be joined by Dr. Keith here in a few minutes. This is a very important task we're undertaking to eradicate this epidemic. So I want to thank you all for coming, and let's get to it. Thank you.
Oh, goodness. Greetings, welcome. Thank you all for being here today. We're so excited to have the inaugural event of Ignite the Spark to Eradicate Suicide. We thank all our vendors, we thank everybody. And, I just pray that anyone who sees this, whether it's live here or the recordings, just pray that everybody who's been touched by suicide can find healing in their heart and can learn about all the ways that we can start to prevent this from continuing as the horrific silent epidemic that it is. So thank you all. We appreciate you and enjoy our program.
Hello, my name is Dr. Keith McNally, and this in part is what I've created almost a year ago. And so this is an Envision Speakers Series panel discussion. In July of 2023, I began these panel discussions as a way of creating community and conversation around social issues. The very first Envision Speakers Series conversation was men's mental health and suicide prevention. Since then, it has evolved to this. I do want to thank Cheyenne Kramer, her husband Don, and Rick May, and everybody who has been a part of the evolution of these conversations. This specific conversation, as we all know, is around suicide. And although that's a very touchy and sensitive topic, my focus is to create a safe space where conversations around suicide can actually take place. The reason for this, I'm a suicide survivor. As a Marine who has faced combat situations and is now diagnosed with PTSD and depression, I've made 5 suicide attempts in my life. The last one being in 2021. At that time, I knew it was pivotal and important, but for the very least, I've got a 14-year-old daughter, to stay alive. But not just stay alive, to change everything about my life, because at some place deep inside, it was important. I just needed to figure that out. All of our panel members are going to share their own story and why they're here today. So what I want to do is kind of give you an idea of how this conversation will take place. At first, I'll go from left to right to the podium and have each panel member introduce themselves, why they're here, and the value that they bring to this conversation. I'll give them all 2 minutes. And then from that point, we'll begin the conversation. Tammy, can we start with you?
Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Reverend Tammy Johns, and I'm a minister here at Unity of the Triangle. and I'm an ordained interfaith minister. The reason I'm here is because I am an Army veteran who has had some trauma, as well as I am a suicide survivor. And you'll hear a little bit more about my story a little later. What I'd like to bring to the conversation is that taking away the stigma of suicide and mental health issues, because it's really important. It is quite the epidemic out there. And also when we find our connection to spirit, how that can help us get through challenging times. And specifically, while we all struggle with this, I also have a purpose of sending this message of getting rid of the stigma in the African American community, in which there is a lot of issues about getting help, because that can sometimes get in the way. So I look forward to participating in this panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Dorothea Dix, and I am a nurse. I am a mental health nurse, and I have been for many years across the generations. And I'm here to tell you my story. I'm a survivor of, suicidal ideation, but if I want to give people hope, there's hope out there, there's help out there. And I think everybody needs to be encouraged, no matter what they're going through.
I'm Rick Mays, the Hope Institute We Care Partnerships. I'm bringing to the table coaching for young men and others who have lost their parent to suicide. We'll share my story later, but that's what I'm here to do, to bring honesty, omnipotence, pure love, and essence to the table and help people to get back to being their inherent human design. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Marita McCorkle, and I've been a foster parent here in North Carolina for 25 years. I have had many young adults that I have walked through suicidal ideations and struggles. And one of my girls committed suicide at the age of 13. So I'm here to give hope to family members who have lost another family member, and love, because love is one of the most important things that I think is missing in most people's lives when they struggle with this. They often don't feel that love. They often don't feel like anybody else cares. And quite often they don't even love or care for themselves. So there's something we've got to change about this. And I want to be able to express that to them.
I'm Michael Goulden. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a certified health and wellness coach. And in my early 20s, I was in a very dark place where I didn't even find a reason to get out of bed in the morning sometimes. And I realized through irrational thoughts, poor coping skills, and medical issues that was the barrier getting in the way. And for the past 30 years, I've dedicated my life to helping people lift these burdens off of them so they can lead fulfilling lives.
My name is Stephanie Caverline. My background is I'm a commercial interior designer who was a stay-at-home mom up until about 10 years ago. I started getting back into commercial interior design, and I actually focus on health and wellness and how I design spaces. I was in the process of launching my design consulting business when my husband committed suicide in May of 2022. It was a very surprising and just traumatic event for me and my two children. And my children are now 20 and 17. And I am basically using my vulnerability and sharing my story and the circumstances around it to talk about how I'm turning a personal tragedy into an opportunity to make a positive impact on others in ways that they can learn, grow, and heal.
My name is Martin Grossman. I'm a success coach by trade. My passion has been helping men, and in 1995, I went through a divorce that led to a very deep depression. And the only thing that really kept me alive is I didn't want my parents have to face that I had taken my own life. which led to me starting a men's discussion group, which led to writing a book on it, led to me volunteering on the White House Council, proposed White House Council on Boys and Men, may never occur, and a commitment to understanding that one of the key things is most of the suicides are still men, and how infused in our society we are blind to the pains of men. And all you have to do is think of comments about women and negative comments about men and switch the roles, and you'll realize how blind we are to it. And I became good friends with Tom Golden. He has an excellent book on it, The Way Men Heal. And I'm here because I want to continue to bring awareness to what I believe is young men today have a higher chance of suicide than ever before. Some of the numbers are 10 to 14, 60 to 70% over girls 30 to 40, adolescent 15 to 19, 70 to 80% over 20 to 30 in girls. Young men, 75 to 80% versus 15 to 20 in the 20 to 24, and then overall, basically 75%. This is an important issue, and I believe what happens with young men is we have less support for them, and then what they do is they either lash out or they lash in. And this is part of an important conversation I want to be part of. Thank you.
The first thing I want to do is thank everybody who is in our virtual audience. Thank you for joining us. The second thing I want to do is thank everybody in person. I know coming out on a Saturday morning to a church may not be the first thing on your list, but I do appreciate it. And of course, I want to thank everybody who is joining in this conversation. So Tammy, I want to start with you, if that's okay. And then from there, I want everybody to kind of join into the conversation as they feel it's appropriate. Can you share your story, please? Your story around suicide.
Yes, absolutely. So it was years ago, and I was living what many people would call an ideal life. I was living with my lifelong partner. We were raising a daughter. We had 2 dogs and living in a great house, everything missing except the white picket fence. And so in a matter of a few months, I lost all of that. And it sent me to a very dark place in which I call my dark night of the soul. And I suffered with depression and some PTSD by being an Army veteran already. And so that was just some compound trauma around all the loss and the grief. And what I found is that going through that dark time, I felt like I did not have a purpose. And I was feeling so much loss, and I didn't know where to turn. And it's not that I wanted to die, I just didn't know how to live. And I think that's why a lot of people, or some people may come to that place in their lives where they think, I don't know what to do next. And that's where I felt that I just wanted to take away the pain and I wanted to get away from grief. And so I decided to take my own life. And it was during that time, friends found me, and I came through the process of getting help, and whether it was therapy, medication, friends and family, and a supportive environment where the light began to shine. And I felt God had a purpose for me on this earth. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is my niece told me at the time, she said, "You are my role model." And I thought, you know what? I cannot leave this earth and leave that negative impact on her, and saying that that is what I wanted her to remember me by. So sometimes it is reaching out to others and telling their story, and also letting people know, letting other people tell you the impact that you have on their lives in order for you to get through this very dark time. And I have, as I mentioned earlier, I went on and I lived, I found my purpose in life, and I am ministering to others on this path. And that's what I want to share with you, that there is hope out there.
And that seems to be a very general understanding of what's going on with all of you today. More than one of you has mentioned the word hope. in your own space that's very, very important. Rick, I know hope is not only a space, but it's also an acronym. What does hope mean for you?
First, let me turn the microphone on. Oh, can you hear me? Okay, here we go. Hope for me is a process. Honestly assess, omnipotently connect, pure love, and essence. We bring those three inherent design pieces together and live those, we can find our essence and be loving, caring human beings. We've gotten so far away from hope that now we have to work to get it back. And so that's what hope means to me. And it came to me in 2013 when God and I were having a chat. And he told me hope. And then right after that came 4 words: the honesty, the omnipotence, the pure love, and the essence. And from that point, I wrote a book called Hope, Your Essence Navigation System. I started Coach Rick Vision, coaching young men and others for grieving and suicide. And we'll tell my story. They can tell my story now.
Let's give Stephanie an opportunity, if she would, she has a microphone, to kind of share her space, because when her husband died, it was really a strange and awkward impact in this really scary situation in her life. Stephanie, you found hope somewhere.
So my, briefly, my story is that my family all went through getting sick with COVID in the fall of 2021. And my husband went through a job change and was still suffering from after effects of being sick with COVID. And so when he changed jobs in early spring of 2022, one of the conditions for him getting his new position was that because his company held federal contracts, they had to show 100% proof of vaccination. So we had not been vaccinated as a family, and he went and got vaccinated for COVID to comply with his new company's requirements, even though he was never going to have to leave the house and was going to be 100% remote, never going to have to travel. 3 weeks later is when he took his own life in our home with me and my daughter there. And it wasn't in front of us. We found him hours later, but it was completely out of character for him. And when I say that, he and I focused a lot on personal development and health and wellness and how we did life. So the hope that has come from that whole experience for me is, coming out of that experience and feeling like my life was 1,000 puzzle pieces all over the ground and I didn't even know what the picture was supposed to look like, has now transformed into, the pain of and the transformation in the 2.5 years almost since he's been gone. You have to believe that the pain that you're going through is preparing you to become the person that you need to be for yourself, but also someday for somebody else. And your pain is going to transform you to serve in a new way. I speak that from experience, and that is truly what keeps me going. And using my journey to serve brings me hope each and every day.
Thank you. I want to go to Maureen and have her share your story, and then move to Martin.
So, as a foster parent, I have a lot of young adults and a lot of kids that come through my home that are often struggling. I had a young girl, her name was Priscilla, and at the age of 12, she was looking for a forever family. She had been in a foster care system for 7 years. She came to my home. She was given the opportunity to go to 3 homes to find her forever family. I was the first one she came to. She went home after that weekend and said, I don't need to go anyplace else. I want to live with Miss Maria. And so about a month later, she moved in with me. Well, in North Carolina, she had to be under my roof for 3 months before we could start the process of adoption. Her father, who lived in Arizona and had not had anything to do with her life for 7 years, found out that she was being adopted as well as her sister. And he petitioned the state of North Carolina to get his 2 daughters back. Priscilla adamantly expressed the fact that she did not want to go back, that she wanted to stay with me. However, she was forced to go back to her dad, and she committed a suicide less than a year later. It is one of the hardest things that I've ever been through. It's that moment where you want to give up. You want to say, I don't need to be here for anywhere else. I wanted the kids, I had my kids that were in at home. They weren't adopted at the time. And I called my social worker and I'm like, I can't do this anymore. But yet here I am, 14 years later, still serving this population of kids. And giving them that place of hope, that place of love. I have a young man, his name's Jeffrey, who's now my son. He lives in Texas and he's a truck driver. And my relationship with him started by him expressing suicidal ideations on Facebook. And I reached out to him and went and helped to counsel him in the moment. I didn't know him that well, but now I call him my son. And his life has changed because he has a family that has shown him the love. He has people around him that has given him that hope. And that's what we need to do. We need to be able to love and embrace individuals when they're going through these moments. Quite often we're afraid of it because we don't know how to respond. But they don't know how to respond either. And they just need that glimmer. They need that feeling of hope. And so my thing, like I do, I think of different things. There's moments I drive through town and I see, you ever see those trucks that have the big back end? The wheels kind of stick out. Well, Priscilla always called them chipmunk cheek trucks. So I'll get those chipmunk cheek trucks the moments. Or my daughter and who are very well, will come up and just lick me on the face because that's what Priscilla did all the time. She'd just come up and lick you on the face. And so that just gives us those moments of hope and that moment of joy that we need.
Marina, thank you. Martin, can you share your story? And then Doreen, I want you to jump in after Martin.
When I think of hope, I think that something else must be brought up, and that is purpose and meaning. And the thing that got me through when my practice marriage ended and I went in a deep depression was the purpose of staying alive for my parents. And a lot of excellent topics on love and hope and understanding people is important to consider, but sometimes you need to take a stand on something that may not look like just love. And I want to tell a story of a friend that I heard was considering taking his own life. His daughter was a teenager, and I knew that if I just told how much I cared about him, it wouldn't get through to him. And I attempted that, and it made no difference. And he thought if he took his own life, his daughter would get a nice life insurance policy and be taken care of. And he had figured out how to do it to make it look like an accident. And I told him if he took his own life, I would guarantee his daughter would never get that money. And I'd stand up in court and prove that he had done it. And that's what stopped him. And my love and caring and concern in words would have made no difference with him. So sometimes love and compassion has a fierceness to it. And that's part of what I reconnected to with the men's work, because I had written off all those things. I had overly, what a guy said, you're a snag. What's that? Sensitive new age guy. Your heart with no spine. And I realized I had embraced the feminine part of myself before I honored and accepted the masculine, and that was what was missing. And we need to understand in purpose and meaning, it's okay to pick something. It doesn't always mean that's your divine calling in life. It's just important enough to get a purpose and meaning who gets you through the next day. I've talked to a lot of young people who have been given love and cherishing and everything else, but not given the opportunity to fail enough, and they have no confidence. I made a t-shirt that said, if your life's boring, it's because you're boring. Life begins outside your comfort zone. So I believe a long part of hope is about having the fierceness to take a stand and speak up for someone in difficult times and difficult ways. And I believe my friend would not be alive today. In fact, we had the president of the Men's Center commit suicide, and he was surrounded with light and hope. And I'm still mad that I didn't go, cut this crap out. Let's pull him aside and say, no, this is not okay. This is not okay. I selfishly want you here. And give him some reason for purpose and meaning. So I believe we need to be open to all possibilities and look at what works in the different situations.
Thank you. Dorothy?
Right, well, hope for me is everything. My story is kind of all around hope in God and the anger I had towards God. So I had a brain tumor 9 years ago now. And when I came out of my surgery, I had a grand mal seizure, and I woke up not being able to move the right side of my body. And when I went into surgery, I was fine. Me and God had a conversation. I was great. And then I was just like, I just don't want to be a vegetable. And I came out, and they didn't know why I had a grand mal seizure. They didn't know how to fix what was going on. I was the proverbial bad patient that you know, they tell you about, but never happens. That was me. And so they were telling me that I was going to sit in a chair. This is my version. My husband has a totally different version. What I heard was, this is it. This is what you're going to be. And my husband had to bathe me. He had to feed me so much. And it was hard as a nurse, and as a mental health nurse especially. My toolbox of coping skills was gone. And I was stripped down to nothing. I was given no hope. And I sat there in my darkness, in my chair, thinking, I can't do this to my husband. He's too young. My children don't need to deal with this. God was good enough, even though I was really mad at him at the time. He was good enough that I could not get up out of the chair. I could not go in the kitchen. I could not get my pills. I could not do any of the things that would allow me to take my own life. God and me had a lot of conversations through that. And even though the doctors gave me no hope, my friends picked me up. My husband picked me up. My children were there, and they gave me hope, which turned my story around. I got up. I had friends walk me in the pool. I learned how to eat. I learned how to walk. I learned how to go back to work. About a year later, I fell and hit my head. And I just have started coming out of it again. But this time I had hope and had God with me. And so I just want everybody to know that there are people out here willing to help. There is hope.
Thank you. Mike? What's your story?
So in my early 20s, in that dark part of my life, I decided that there were all kinds of options in my life, that I didn't have to follow the program, go to school, get a job, get married, get a house, have kids. And I was able to get out of that and do exactly what I wanted to do. And I wanted to be in nature, so I lived in Yosemite National Park for about 6 months. And then eventually made my way to a YMCA Camp Greenville, just a little bit south of Brevard. And I discovered my purpose there. And what I'm hearing from everybody on this panel is something that matches the research of acceptance commitment therapy, of having values and then living in alignment with those values, which they call committed action. And it was a process of being fierce and being fierce enough to face your vulnerabilities, but not just stopping there, learning coping skills, how to deal with certain things. So I went back to graduate school and got my master's degree in social work. And I was able to help people who were in the state or worse than being in that state. So in the 30 years I've been doing this, I've either had people who are on the verge of wanting to attempt suicide. I've had clients who did attempt suicide. And I have had clients who were coming out of the hospital and they were a new referral to me after they attempted suicide. And everybody basically has the same theme of pain. And they want to alleviate that pain, and they don't know any other way to alleviate that pain than to end their life. So I've become very committed to helping people get out of their irrational thoughts, increasing the thoughts on the part of the brain that are healthy, and decreasing these irrational thoughts that I know good, I have no purpose, there's no reason for me to be here. And one of my pet projects with this, and this kind of ties in with what Martin was saying, is dealing with dominance behavior. This is a key issue that a lot of people come to me with, that there are people who are cruel and mean in either direct ways or very subtle ways that push people down to help elevate people, other people. So people doing this to other people so they can elevate themselves. So I am giving people a skill set to move to irrational thoughts and have coping skills in areas of mental health that really don't address this dominance behavior, this bullying, to really help people get out of the dark and come into the light.
Thank you so much. Give me an opportunity to share my story. So in 2021, when I attempted my 5th act against my life, I had been unemployed for quite some number of months, and there was no foreseeable hope in changing that situation. So again, this is the tail end of COVID, the quarantine era, so everybody's kind of isolated, living their own chaos in their own homes. And like I said, I have a 14, she's now 14, so she was a young girl then. I didn't have hope. I didn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. I didn't have those things that we're talking about. And so I recognized that if I've done it before, unsuccessfully, I can find a way to do it successfully. You know what? I failed again. So even after all of that, I still felt like a failure. I'm not going to cry. What I started to do was, well, the first thing I wanted to do was find a way, I think this was mentioned by our panel, was find a way to live. I had to find a way of wanting to breathe the next minute, the next 5 minutes, the next hour, and so forth. Then after that, I had to find a reason to want to get out of bed every morning. I needed to connect with people. I needed to find a way of connecting with people that made sense and that added value to their lives and then to mine. And the only connections that I had were my 2000 LinkedIn connections. I laugh at that because as most of us have, if we have a professional profile on LinkedIn, we don't really know those people. They are a face and a resume. What I did was go to their DM, tap on their virtual shoulder and say, would you like to have a conversation? And it was as simple as that. As scary as that sounds, or as scary as that is, or as scary as that was, because they're all strangers. People said yes. People said yeah. No, not everybody, not at first. But people began to say yes. Now, again, perspective and context, we were all isolated. We're all COVID. We're on quarantine. People wanted to find a way of reconnecting. And we did that virtually. But what I found was in all that chaos, people wanted to have conversations. People wanted to share their story. And you know what? I let them do. I let them share their story. They wanted to share their story. Every one of them that said yes had a story to tell me. Now, what they had found was a way to live through the chaos. What they had found was a way to find meaning and purpose in their lives again. What they found was a way to make a pivot, intentionally, that was personal to them. And that some of them, it was exercise or spiritual or whatever that path was. What they were doing, knowingly or not, was aligning themselves with the internal values that were innately them. And as you can see here now, both in the virtual world and in this present world, people here before me, each one of these people before you found all of that. But what became really important was the next conversation, and the next conversation, and the next story, because I still needed to find a reason to live. And I was living vicariously, I think that's the word, for everybody else's story. Their success story became my success story. And it wasn't after 2 years that I finally owned my own story. I owned the fact that I made an attempt against my life. I owned the fact that I made 4 other previous attempts against my life. I owned the fact that I wanted to connect with people, because for me, it was the loneliness, it was the emptiness that was inside of me. That was the reason I didn't want to live anymore. So I want to extend this conversation to do just that. The first thing I want our panel members to discuss is how important is it to connect with other people, given your personal space and what you've experienced. And then from that conversation, I want to talk about how we can create spaces for people to continue this conversation and not feel stigmatized about the fact that we're talking about suicide. Please, I don't care who goes first. This is a free-for-all. Rick, you've got your hands raised.
Well, I didn't get a chance to tell my story yet. I told you about hope, but I didn't tell you about my story. So let me just do that.
Go ahead and know what to talk
And
about.
also, I understand the COVID thing. I would have lost my job if I had not gotten the jab. So I feel for you and your family on that whole thing. So, when I was 14 years old, I was on vacation in Glens Island, in Virginia, and my mom came out of the blue, sat me down, my sister down, and told us that our dad had committed suicide. That sent me into a life of turmoil. First of all, I didn't have a father figure in my life. And so I had no real guidance in which to grow up with. So I had to learn how to grow up on my own. When my dad did that, I blamed myself. Didn't know at the time I was blaming myself, but I was. And I went into some really, really destructive behavior. I didn't know it at the time, but I was trying to take my own life too. And I didn't even realize that till I was in my 40s. I killed a girl when I hit a telephone pole, went being drunk, because I was trying to kill myself. I was doing drugs, got strung out on crank, we called it, trying to kill myself that way. Luckily, when I was 21, I was given an ultimatum to go in the Navy or be blackballed from the family. That's how bad it was. I blamed everybody, including myself, for what my dad did. Finally, when I was 42, after years and years of destructive behavior and self-discovery, I finally came to the point where I understood that it was not my fault that my dad did that. So at the age of 42, which by the way was the age he did himself, he was 42. I didn't know that till later either, but I went to his gravesite and I wrote him a letter. And I told him that I forgave him. I'm not gonna cry.
Now, let me
And I
ask,
told him that
right?
I was not going to let myself do the same thing he did. And that's how I raised my family, was with a steady, steadfast support for me and my family, my kids, and my kids are great now. Thank you.
I want to say, I've been jokingly saying that I'm not going to cry because I want to facilitate the conversation. And let's be real with the people who are watching and listening. Crying is okay, even for men. So we just need to be flat out with that. Rick, thank you so much. But I do want to continue the conversation as we can, is to talk about what it really means to start building a community of people around you and your family, so that we can change how we feel about ourselves and our circumstances, because that became really important to me, Stephanie.
I want to talk about that a little bit because that's been one of the guiding principles for that Chris and I used when we raised our children, was the value of in-person connection. We did not, we were very close as a family. We did a lot together as a family regularly. Both my kids, who are now 20 and 17, aren't really on social media. They see the real value in in-person connecting. And I'm proud as a mom for that. The way that it came out so Chris was an agile coach. He was in the technology world. And during COVID, what pained him a lot was not being able to meet in person with his teams. His teams really, they just took a lot away from his one-on-one meetings that he would have with them each week. He would talk to them not only about what their work goals were, but their personal goals as well, and how to incorporate all that together to bring meaning to what they were doing in the workplace, but as well as taking that home with their families. And we had a strong marriage. So when Chris died, I spoke at his celebration of life service, which was about 4 weeks after he died, and it was Father's Day weekend. I told our pastor I had a lot to say, and one of the things that I talked about in my speech at that service was the value of in-person connection, how we needed to be able to read each other's expressions and be in the same spaces with one another. There's an energy that comes from being with one another. That service was recorded and sent to his workplace up in Massachusetts. And a few weeks later, talking about LinkedIn connections, one of his colleagues reached out to me through a direct message and said, "Thank you for saying all that you said. I watched the recording. I have been struggling with my own health issues after having COVID, and I've been contemplating taking my own life. And what you said has inspired me to work on myself and my health and fight back." And that meant a lot to me, that I could reach somebody like that. And I guess that was the start of my journey in understanding that how I can relate to people and share my story and be vulnerable out in the world, face to face, in person, not necessarily, throwing it out there, but inviting people by listening and really just promoting connection. I have had all kinds of people find me, approach me, talk to me, and just creating a welcoming environment is something that we need more than ever in today's world. I started a nonprofit. I'll talk a little bit about that later as we get to it. I'm calling it Liberty Oaks. It's basically on my farm, but one of my missions with what I'm doing with that is promoting in-person connection in real ways where people can have these conversations and have it be a safe place.
Thank you. This is a free conversation now. Tammy?
Yes, what I'd like to say and really touch on, that we've all been talking about is connection and conversation. What I found for myself as I was going through my dark night of the soul, as I called it, as I mentioned earlier, is that people looked at me and said, "You're so strong. You can get through so many things." And that in itself can create a barrier because you feel like, okay, I have to live a certain way and I have to uphold a certain image. And it is okay to share our stories. It is really important to share our stories and create a sense of community because then people know they are not alone. Because I felt a loneliness, I would go out and whether I was going to work or whether I was conversing with friends, then I would go home and sit in the dark space of my own home and be alone. And that is what I want to share with people is that when people are going through experiences, let them be able to talk without the stigma and saying, well, pull yourself up or you'll get over this or you'll get through it. Meet people in the space where they are so that they are comfortable and feel like sharing. I'm in a lot of pain. Maybe I just don't feel like I can get up the next day, or I just don't know how to take the next step. And there is a story about someone, there's this story that goes around, I don't know if I'll get it all correct, but there is a person walking down the street and they fall into a hole. And then a minister walks by and says, okay, how can I help you? And then they throw a Bible or whatever sacred text is down in that hole. And someone else walks by and says, come on up, and gives them a ladder and says, just climb on up. But then there is another person who walks by and jumps into the hole with them. And they are able to help them climb up that ladder and climb out of that hole. So whether you've had your own experience or whether you know someone else who is going through that experience, just be able to meet people where they are. Because what I'd like to bring into it now is ignite the spark. We have within us our own divine light, and we are part of a greater divinity. And God has for us a purpose in our lives, and we just need to be able to have that opening to be able to see that purpose.
Can you thank me, Mike?
I want to reach out to the skeptics or the people who are reluctant to share their feelings or reach out to other people and talk to you about the science behind this. And just bear with me as I give you a little lesson with this, and that there are two brain functions that are afoot here. One is the fight, flight, or freeze, what we call the limbic system. And this is where we get all the bad, irrational thoughts. Thoughts like, I got into this myself, I can get out of this myself. I need to handle this for me. And it's not true. Part of it's true, yes, personal responsibility and facing your stuff, absolutely. But there is another function, and that is called the executive function. This is about problem solving. This is about seeing things rationally and objectively. This is about taking a big problem and having the ability to break it down into small bits. It's also the part of the brain that reaches out to other people and recognizes other people or empathizes with other people. And when we expand our network, we increase the activity in that part of the brain. When we add words to what we're experiencing, words like shame, fear, hurt, helplessness, when we articulate those, we actually increase the activity in that part of the brain and we begin to feel better. Proven over and over again, and there's a lot of evidence with this in the different modalities of treatment. We have acceptance committal therapy, we have cognitive behavioral therapy, we have dialectical behavioral therapy, and we have critical incident stress debriefing when people have experienced critical incidents of death or loss, something very traumatic that happens. These are all modalities in training, and the theme comes up over and over again. We're increasing this executive function over here. Now, this is not to discount the spiritual aspect of this. I am a member of Unity. I grew up Catholic. Reiki 1 and 2, pranic healing, shamanism, all of these play a part. And I can see, even though that there's more to it than brain function, those also help with brain functions. And I just wanted to add that and reach out to people and people who are reluctant to get help. We mentioned men and their reluctance to be vulnerable. Having the courage to be vulnerable, the courage to go beyond anger, beyond words like frustration, irritation, being bothered, and getting to the real stuff. That really hurt me. I feel really helpless in that situation. And reaching out to a person that you trust, or reaching out to a professional that you can trust, and making a real difference in your life.
Well, I think Mark.
I remember being in therapy and a therapist who wasn't trained in the unique way men grieve. I was breaking down emotion and tears, and he said, "You really need to get more in touch with your feelings." And I looked over, this was during my practice marriage, at my wife then and saw disdain. And I told the therapist, if I do this at work, at IBM, I'll lose my job. And he said, "Oh, this is important to get in touch with your feelings." And so I realized that what I've learned since is for many men, we haven't been stuffing good times in those closets, but grief and shame and sadness. But we also need to be realistic about the world, that we have to find safe places to express it. And that was something that wasn't taught to me in the therapeutic world, and the importance of understanding how influenced we are as men in being shamed. At IBM, I locked myself in closet because I couldn't stop the tears, because I had started to open the closet door where I'd stuffed them all and they kept pouring out. And my therapist at the time goes, "Oh, this is good. They need to accept it." "No, I'll lose my job." My wife at the time looks disgusted. And this is important, that we don't discount the unique things, that men may grieve differently. And I remember Robert Bly saying that we go from, when we go into depression that can then lead to suicide, when we don't do the grief work. But the grief work of men may look different. And I'm going to tell a brief story of a friend of mine whose father died and his wife was a nurse, and I was the more emotional of the two of us. And she said, "He hasn't grieved his father's death." And I said, "Yes, he has." And she says, "No, he hasn't." And I said, "What's he doing in the backyard?" I said, "Well, instead of grieving his father's death, he's been landscaping the backyard and transforming it." And I jokingly said, "Yeah, I'm from DC, and I didn't even recognize the backyard when I came in." And then I said to her, "Where did he play with his father the most?" And she said, "In the backyard." You see, we need to have room for men to grieve by doing, not always feeling. And that's another way we have to start honoring and recognizing how we shame men isolates them more. And I've been to a business men's group, and one of the guys kind of drifted off. And I go, no, I smell he's isolating too much. We need to go do something together. You see, not always expressing feelings is the doorway out of this. Sometimes we need to have permission to do something. And I think that's an important point that needs to be considered and recognized. And it's not talked about enough because we have some fear if we do something to help men and boys, we'll take something away from women. When in actuality, we're taking lots away from women by not acknowledging the unique difference of how men grieve. Thank you.
I do want to add, and I'm going to give you an opportunity, is that we create that safe space in order to express ourselves.
Yeah, that's actually, I think, an important factor for me as a caretaker is how do I create a safe space for the individuals that come into my care? And for some of them, it's really challenging because they push and they're not always the nicest to us. But it's important for us to not take things personally. I'll give an example of one of my young men. His name's AJ. He started a relationship with me, and he didn't want anything to do with me at the beginning. Like, he'd show up once in a while, but he wasn't willing to commit to being in the home with us. Eventually, he came and he stayed with us for a little while, but he'd always go kind of incognito. But there'd be those moments where he'd reach out to me, hey, Mom, Rita, and you could tell he just needed that hug, that even if it was just over the phone or however it may be. And over the years, he's had a couple of those ideations where he's called me. And one thing that I want to say is I have not been afraid to call the police if I'm not able to get to that young adult or that person in the moment. You can't be afraid to call the police because what you're doing is trying to protect them as well as yourself. And they're trained to help and not always take the young adult or the person that's struggling to the hospital, but they have different things that they can do to help process it. But it's important, I think relationships that we talk about are important, and being able to not take things personally as to how they're expressing, but yet at the same time being able to provide that safe place is so important. And I think another thing that's really important is those as caretakers, that we too develop community around ourselves, because it's not an easy space to be in. It's not an easy space to feel like we're pouring out and that there's so much that we have to do for individuals, but yet we don't have anybody there to help fill up our empty places when we've poured out. And so it's important for the community to come together as a whole in order to really solution this. And if you look at today's environment and all the bullying and things like that are going on, and our young adults, our kids don't have any place that they feel safe to truly express those things. Martin's talked about them, young men especially. They just don't feel a safe place to go and talk about the struggles that they're having. I know growing up, I didn't feel like I had a safe place. I've been going through stuff about that lately, but we've got to be able to learn how to open up safe spaces for individuals.
I do appreciate that. Does anybody else have something, Rick?
I was mad as hell. I was angry that things happened the way they did. I had no safe space. My mom tried counseling. My mom tried Big Brothers. It's very important if you're a parent to find a way. And thank God my mom did. She's the one that saved me. It wasn't a counselor, no disrespect. There's good ones and there's bad ones too, and all and everything, right? And I just happened to get ones that weren't so hot, some weren't so healthy. And I also had big brothers that weren't so healthy either, just after my mom. But what saved me was my mom became a very spiritually connected human being, and she learned about something called the child within. What I now call in my work the essence. She taught me and coached me starting in like 1988. And it took several years to come through identifying my child within, because they're in all of us. Just so everybody knows, everybody has a child within. And when that child speaks, you have to listen. You have to follow what your child within is telling you. My mom taught me exercises about how to go into a meditative state and how to drain the poison from within me through my child within. And I got to the point where I could actually feel the oozing in my pimples, my third eye area. And I was amazed how much my life changed. And when I finally came to the realization that I am worthy, I was on a mountain hike and I met God. That's when I received this beautiful power of love, energy within me. From that point on, my life changed. And I was able to pull up my socks, as they say, and move on with my life. I have 6 kids, I got 11 grandkids, everything's been great, except for that one spot that took me till I was in my 40s to be able to overcome. That's all I really had. But I love you all. Purely I love you. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Given all of our stories, given the understanding that we need to connect with one another, and now appreciating the fact that a safe space is needed to have these conversations, let's talk about that. What does that safe space really look like? What does it look like for you? Hold on a second. What does that look like for you? And then how do we individually, now as a group, start facilitating that safe space so that we can have these conversations? And as Martin said, remove the stigma that's associated and the shame that's associated with this idea. Now go ahead.
So there are times to let yourself be open in safe spaces, and there are times that are not. You know, if you're, I joke with my male clients a lot, you know, if we're standing in a field and people are throwing rocks at us, we're not going to turn to each other and say, you know, I'm really hurt and disappointed that these guys are throwing rocks at us. You know, that's not the time and place to do that. The time and place to do that is in the presence of someone that you trust. And I have a diagram on my desk, and it has an outer ring that says facts, it has a ring that says thoughts, and in the middle it has one that says emotions. And these are the 3 levels of trust to figure out and assess on your own, you know, is this the person I share this with? And the first level of facts. And this goes into taking action. This goes into being more dynamic about this and not just, you know, releasing this kind of thing, but also actively assessing. And the first part of this is, do I trust this person? Do their words match their action? Do they take ownership of their mistakes? Those types of things at the very factual level. And then that gives you the cue that it's safer to move to the next level of sharing your thoughts, opinions, and ideas. This is all the cognitive stuff. And the red flag there is if someone discounts or dismisses or makes fun of your thoughts, opinions, and ideas. So if somebody says, oh, you like that? Well, okay, I guess to each his own. Well, that's not a safe environment to do that. But if somebody says, you know, if I don't agree with what you're saying, or I don't really like that, but please tell me why you like that. Well, that shows an interest in me, and even a greater interest in me, because they're putting their selfish needs aside and their ego needs aside to tell me or ask me and show an interest as to why I like this. And then that is a green flag to share my vulnerable emotions. Sure, it's easy to share anger, disappointment, and things like frustration. That's the word I hear the most. But, you know, the words like, I'm really ashamed. I really feel inadequate. I really feel hurt. In saying these, again, that activates the healthy part of the brain, or at least healthy in this particular circumstance. You need the other limbic system to survive, but it makes your life miserable. When you have the executive function, when you label these things, it frees you up and increases that brain activity. And then you can share your vulnerable emotions. What the red flag there is, well, maybe you just need to man up. Suck it up, buttercup. Life is tough. Those are the red flags. Or something very dismissive. Well, I hear what you're saying, but I'm the kind of person who just kind of pushes past things, and I just kind of move forward with my life. And I just kind of set those emotions aside. Now, a person that you can trust will say this: I'm really sorry for what you're going through. And I want to tell you that you didn't deserve that. And I am here for you. And I will go down into the well with you and help you out of this. And then that makes a very fertile ground to start taking the action steps, to start looking at the coping skills behind that. And this is what I've seen over and over with my clients that has really helped them to reach out, to trust, and use that part of the brain. Because if you're interacting with other people and you're also helping them and you have a friendship with them, that gets you beyond your selfish survival needs and into the part of you that wants to help others as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So I've had the opportunity to have multiple conversations in the geriatric population very recently about this. I go to the table, my mother has this breakfast table. Now picture it, there's like 10 people around this table. They rotate, they come in and out. They all talk, they all listen, then they go away and nobody gets their feelings heard. Everybody gets to express what they're feeling. So I bring up suicide. And you know, they all listened and they all have a story and they all came to me individually to tell me what's gone on and what's going on in their community. There was a man that he came to the community with his wife passed within 6 months, and he was left in a community he didn't know. And he was hurt and he was grieving and he didn't know what to do. And this community that they live in did not do anything. Makes me very angry. I'm a very big advocate in this facility. But I just have conversations with people. We're all people. It doesn't matter if the person next to you is an executive and you're not. They're a person. Reach out. Just say, how are you? And mean it. You'll be surprised what you get.
Agree. Anybody else? Tammy?
I'll just share briefly. So as we started having the conversation around, the eradicated suicide, and I knew that I had my own story, I looked within myself and I said, am I ready to tell my story? Because there is the shame, right? And so if we can get to a space where people don't feel ashamed on any actions that they may have taken or how they are feeling, I think that can create a really good safe space where people can have these conversations and say, I don't feel like going on. The pain is so great in my life that I just can't take another step. To be able to have someone and reach out and say, yes, it's okay. I'm going to be right here with you and you can talk about it. Because what I realized within myself, when I share my story, kind of like the point you just said, everyone has a story, whether it's themselves or whether it's someone else they know. And the more we begin to spread that circle and let people be able to talk and listen, then we will be able to eradicate this epidemic, because it is really a painful place for people to be in order to step out of that. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say, in all my work over the years around workplace wellness and design and what I know about health and wellness, one of the things that that I've learned and studied is the innate connection that humans have with nature. And I believe there's a profound healing power in being in nature. I've experienced it since the loss of my husband on our property. We have a pond, we have lots of wildlife, we have fields. Our house sits about a quarter mile back from the road. I have spent countless hours walking around my property, sometimes 6 to 8 miles, just going around and looking at nature, calming my thoughts, calming my mind. We talked a little bit about the power of meditation. That, I tell people sometimes the situation that I've been through sometimes feels like I have 1,000 tabs open in my brain, like a computer, and just calming the chaos. Being in nature is a way for me to be able to do that. And I think that's of really high value especially in today's world. And there's a trust that comes in the predictability of the sun rising every day and setting at night. And I don't think that I can underscore that enough.
I love the comment, 1,000 tabs open. I like the one 50 tabs open in my mind, 3 are locked up, and where's that music coming from? I was thinking about the years of being in men's groups and how when I started, women would come and say, well, why isn't there a woman there defending themselves? And I've actually even led women's groups before. And it was when men finally have the courage to get together and build trust to talk to each other, you'd be surprised. It's usually not complaining about women. It's about addressing what's important to them and their concern that maybe their stepfather and how do they interact with them, or their father died and now their mother's treating them like dad and how weird that can be, or what type of son were they to their father. And these are the issues that in the 12 years and putting together the first book I found out, and it was different, but the key is how much work it takes for men to start just trusting other men and start being able to talk to them. And that it's okay that maybe we start by increasing relationships. We go for a walk, or like you said, a hike, or play golf, or for me, go to the range with somebody. That's my relaxation. And having these conversations is understand society doesn't realize how much work it is for men to get in a safe enough place to be just among men. When I went to the first men's weekend, which was called the Sterling Men's Weekend, the guy said, if I stick with you for 6 months, I then want you to go to this men's weekend. And he did. And I remember one time he didn't call me. He was a mentor in business. And he said, I broke my word to you. I didn't call you. What should be my penance? And I jokingly said 50 push-ups. And he put the phone down and he said, guys, count it out. He's with his men's group. And I heard a guy at least 10 or 12 years older than me doing 50 push-ups. I was then terrified because I realized now I had to keep my word and go to a group of men exploring life. And I had no idea how afraid I was of it, how afraid I was of being judged. You see, women don't usually wake up and ask, am I woman enough? But men do have a conversation, am I man enough? And it's okay to have that conversation. They don't have to just completely embrace something different. It's okay to be fierce, but find the right time for it. In fact, if you aren't, you'll probably become passive aggressive and more violent than lashing out. And that's what I learned is that safe space for men, we need to realize, look around. Most of the men's centers have been eradicated. If you try to raise money for men, forget it. I've been volunteering for a proposed White House Council for Men and Boys. They'll never hear it in Washington. Start noticing how we have very little tolerance in this area. Boys are playing video games because it's the only place left for them to win. When I went to high school, we had, instead of Ritalin, we had recess, and we went out and almost killed each other several times a day, and there was room for that. We don't have room for that anymore. So we're creating an army of young men that will be lashing out more or lashing in, I see, at a logarithmic rate until this change. And you say, well, what about, why aren't men standing up for them? Because if you speak up for men in business, your career could be over in a heartbeat. Just a heartbeat. It's actually going to be mothers that say enough is enough. I've had so many mothers come to me. I had my friend write the book called Helping Mothers Be Closer to Their Men. They go, I know how to fight with my daughter, but I have no idea how to interact with my son. And I said, Tom, you must write this book. And even then, I'll give women this book and they'll not read it. I'm still trying to figure that one out, but complain about it. To understand there is something different. And until we start turning around and seeing this, I remember when I had to embrace the masculine in myself to see other men. It's hard to understand. But now I look and can see other men. I can see younger men. And they can tell. This is hard work. This is not touchy-feely work. This is fearful work. This is warrior work. And we need room for that to create everything we're talking about in this meeting today.
Martin, well, I want to say, Martin, thank you. And at some point, we're going to have to come back, maybe not today, of course, but talk about masculine and feminine energies and how that kind of works. That's not the place for this conversation. I do appreciate it. Rick, I know you've got something.
I do.
I think, Martin, you've got something. I'm going to let the two of you go, then I'm going to say something, and then we're going to continue.
All right, Martin, I've got a proposal for you. I will work with you to help build these men's groups, to help get these men to stand up, because I need them. I do not cherish being a man like I should. I was bullied. I was raped. Men have been awful to me. And that's why I turned to my mom, I think, for her mentorship. So this is very, very, very important to all of us men to be able to do exactly what you are saying and doing. And I want to join with you, however I need to do that, to help you raise funds, to help you set this thing up, and to help it become a reality. Because boys like me, there's boys in this crowd who probably need that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I promise you, commitment right now.
I'm going to add one more quote. I really want to notice what you said is if we had the meeting only about women, we'd have fine talking about it. But once we make a distinction that leads towards men, feel the resistance, feel the uncomfortableness. That will reveal how systemic this is. And until we do that, we aren't going to have a solution to suicide. It's 70% to 80 male to 20 to 25% female. Thanks.
Maria?
Interesting space to be in the middle of here.
Well, absolutely.
I love it though. One of the things that I think about, and you hear a lot of all of us talking about, is we all fail as humans. We all fail each other. We all fail ourselves. And the ultimate place, like one of my biggest things is the one thing that I want to express to every person that I come in contact with, and every young adult that comes across my threshold, is that they are loved. Not by me, but by God. And help them to develop that relationship with Christ, with God, with whatever you want to use to express that. And help them to find a place where that brings them comfort. Because my love, I just wrote a book, it's called When Our Love Is Not Enough. And that's because, the love that I have extended to the 80 kids that have been in my home have changed every one of their lives, as well as mine. But it's failed them in so many ways. And the only place that they have found comfort is the one that Christ has given to them, that God has given to them. That is the ultimate place that we need to bring each and every individual. And that's really a lot of what our thing is about today, is how do we bring God into that picture? How do I get myself out of the middle of it and allow God into the lives of the individuals that struggle with suicide? How do I get God into the lives of the people who have lost individuals to suicide and are angry or hurt or blaming themselves? And so that's a big aspect of it that just really comes to my mind in the midst of what we're talking about right now.
Well, I appreciate that.
Did you guys hear that?
Transition.
80 kids. That's right. Well said, well said.
So with the time that we have remaining, I do want to focus on something that first Martin said, then you kind of picked up on it, and it's kind of been picked up on, especially in your walk in nature. I'm just going to add something, and then I want to move the transition the conversation to, of all things, moving energy. Maybe that doesn't tap into the aspect of God. I'm not quite sure. I'm not there yet. But I say this to say, in 2021, I made my 5th attempt against my life, and the Grim Reaper wasn't done with me. It's kind of my story. Because a year later, in 2022, I had a heart attack. The medical team said, should have taken you out. They weren't joking. Now, foolish me, or not foolish me, I knew I had the heart attack. It was 3 o'clock on the Sunday morning in October. But I didn't go to the hospital. I wanted to man up. I wanted to treat it like I did everything else in life, which is let it pass on. I'll overcome this and my life will be normal again. But it was noon, same day, so 9 hours later. And I did go for my daily 5-mile walk at that point. It was usually 6, but I only made 5. I know, and I just had a hard time breathing. Now, if you ever had a heart attack, it's one of the most painful, physically painful experiences. It just rips across your chest and your jaw. It's really, really bad. I say all that to say that since then, with the 5 attempts and the heart attack, I now move my energy differently. I go for walks. But I don't just walk. I actually have an intention and goal to hike the Appalachian Trail, the whole thing, 2,193 miles next year. I do have a friend who's going to walk it with me, if he can. Either way, I'm determined to do it on my own. So my walks are at least 12 miles per day with a 30-pound pack on my back. And on Saturdays and Sundays, that goes to 20 upward. I don't pat myself on the back for that. I just say that this is who I am, but it's in the process of, it's in the process of doing that. Learning to move my body differently, learning to treat it in a manner that's healthy and is good for it. It actually has made a significant difference in how I approach my daily life. Getting up, having a purpose for getting up, enjoying the fact that I can do it, and knowing the fact that once I reach confident meaning, for everything and for every veteran and for every person who's been impacted by suicide, I'm doing it for them because it has given me meaning. And I want those people, these conversations, I want those people who are struggling for meaning and purpose to find it. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about moving energy. Martin's story was about a friend who had rebuilt his backyard, and you've talked about walking in nature, and you learned to meditate, moving your energy differently. What does that look like for each of you? If you have a story on that, that's okay. If you don't, that's okay too. But moving your energy differently, how does that really change the way you perceive life?
Yes, excuse me. I would say the for me, I found spending time in nature helps as well. I dedicate at least I know people with their busy lives are not able to maybe do this, but an hour each morning where I get up and I just spend quiet time. And it's about closing those tabs in the computer on the mind. But it is also really important time to connect. I know in the, and I mentioned that one of the things that's really important to me is reaching out to the African American community because there is that stigma of getting help. And then people say, well, if I have an issue, then you talk to someone and they say, just pray it away. And I absolutely am not saying anything is wrong with prayer. Sometimes it is a matter of connecting with what God or the divine or whatever it is you call your higher self is listening. Now, praying can be talking. When you meditate or when you just spend time quietly, then you hear the voice of the divine talking to you. And that is a space where you can come and say, I am enough and I am worthy. And that really helped me get through my period of time where I just sat and I let all of those negative thoughts come out of my mind. And then I allowed the positive thoughts and the positive energy to come in and shift to that energy.
Love it. Thank you so much. Anybody else?
Wait a minute, 5 minutes.
5 minutes? 5 minutes, 4 minutes.
I'm going to teach you an exercise. Okay, it's take 5 minutes, that's all it's going to take. I want everybody to stand up, find some space, stand up, come on.
What you got for us, Rick?
All right. This is how I affirm every day about where it is I want to be and how I connect with God every day. I'm not going to pray. I want everybody to take a moment and think about a special place that is of so much value to you that it puts your mind at ease about where you want to be. For me, it's a hope community, waterfront community, where I can surround myself with people I love. So I want you to just take a minute. If you want to close your eyes, but wait, don't close your eyes yet. When I tell you to take the exercise, you're going to go like this. You're going to put your hands together like this. You're going to take in a full breath of air while you're raising your hands up like this. And you're going to start blowing. Just like that, okay? Here we go. Everybody close your eyes. Think about the place that brings you happiness, joy, prosperity, possibly even wealth. I have my vision. Now, deep breath in. Blow out. I want you to say to yourself, this is my peace. I'm opening myself to receive. In. Out. You expel all of the air out of your lungs. Again. Again. Do you enjoy it? You should be able to feel a sense of peace and energy engaging you. Now, what you have just done is you've opened yourself up to your creator, to what a lot of people call the matrix, a lot of people call it the universe, a lot of people call it God, a lot of people call it Mohammed, a lot of people call it whatever. But now you're there. You're in direct contact. These appendages receive energy. This receives energy. You've got a heart-mind connection called the honesty navigation system, where your heart is in control, not your brain. It's your heart. thank you. I hope that you've got some value.
Yeah, great.
Ray, thank you so much. Although we didn't expect. Although we do appreciate the meditation training. Anyone else who has wanted to share? I'll go with Mike and then Stefan.
So I started my story by saying I went to Yosemite for 6 months. Yosemite National Park, if you haven't been there, is absolutely beautiful. And then from there, I went to the western part of this state, near Brevard, to YMCA Camp Greenville, overlooking the Piedmont. And there was something so healing about that experience. There was something there that didn't match what society was saying, something I got in touch with that reflected something peaceful, a baseline or something that didn't match what I was getting in the messages of the rest of society. And that was the first part of the healing process. Just not knowing what I was going to be doing, just going across the country, and then working at this YMCA camp, which then led me to counseling and my master's degree. But back to the energy. I think energy is huge. So Florence Nightingale, and this relates, she came up with, she was from a very wealthy family, highly educated, and she discovered that it wasn't okay to take scalpels on the battlefield and just not clean them and move to the next person, which is the practices of the day. Germs were not a real thing. You couldn't see them, so there were no danger. So there were no hygiene practices. She discovered through her statistics and working with military casualties that she was able to reduce the casualties by 42% by increasing these practices. How this relates to this conversation is I think the next phase in our evolution is energetic hygiene. You know, there might be guys who get hit in the stomach or something by another guy and they end up being friends afterward, but there can be a worse energetic hygiene if somebody says something really mean or hurtful. So there are different ways that people can bring you down, or they can try to suck the hope out of you and things like that, and bully you and things like that. And there are ways that men are taught with these messages that don't really help. And there are things like, well, just ignore them. Be the bigger person. That type of thing. And so when I ask, you know, the students at the alternative high school I work with, gang members, you know, what can you do about this? They would say, hit him. I say, well, you can't really do that. You'll be arrested, things like that. Then the other alternative was nothing. And so these are the two coping skills. And there are things, very specific things that I would do with these populations when they would try to bully me. I would pull them aside and be like, what's this about? That was far scarier than if I said, okay, you want to go at it, let's go. I'd be like, what's this about? What's going on here? Because obviously you keep bringing this up with me, and I just wanted to get to the core of this. Being assertive, taking action with this, moving that energy. Now, this also goes in line with the body stuff that we're talking about as well. I take a martial art called Aikido. Aikido. And Aikido is called the art of peace because you can defend yourself without having to harm your opponent. And you do this through connection, through awareness, through aligning, and then entering. And you use the same principles in a verbal interaction. And it happens to align with a lot of other spiritual beliefs. So the better you get at being aware, aligning, connecting, and entering, the better chance you have of defending yourself. And I just wanted to offer that up to people as an alternative to what we hear. Because usually when dominance behavior comes into play, the reaction is we need to have more dominance behavior than the other person. And I think it's this shifting of this energy, this connection. And I'll give you a quick example. I'll hand it over to somebody else. I was in a classroom in this alternative high school with gang members and things like that. And they learned that I had a martial arts background, and they said, you know, you might be able to take on one of us, but if the whole class got together, you couldn't take us all on. Now, we could have done the Chuck Norris thing, for all of you who are fans of Chuck Norris. And I could have said, well, if anyone wants to try, we'll have at it. Let's go. And they probably would have backed down. But that wasn't my goal. My goal was to shift the energy in the room to something higher, to be not dominant, but to be an authority, someone who had greater skill set and wisdom and knowledge and experience behind something to raise them up versus pushing them down. And my response was this. I said, why are we having this conversation about me beating you up? I have no intentions of beating anyone up here. In fact, there should be no hitting of anyone going on in this classroom. And if there were someone to come in and harm you, I would use that skill to protect you because I want all of you to be safe. And that whole conversation just shifted and it just went away from this competitive environment to this collaborative relationship environment. And I think this is an important skill to learn to help people go beyond the therapy and go into action to help them prevent their suicidal thoughts as well, to empower them. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie, I think it was you.
Thank you. Getting back to energy, I've been a proponent of trying to manifest good energy for a long time. About 10 years ago, I had a freak health crisis and woke up fully intubated in ICU on life support. And my surgeon told me I was probably gonna be there for about 3 weeks. I had been exercising and eating normally, and it was just a fluke thing. I was able to get out in 6 days, and that was really where I started realizing that what I put into my body and how I treat my body has a direct effect on my overall health and well-being. And well-being and wellness is all about, it emerges from balance. It's a series of small choices that you make every single day, from what you put in your body as far as food and nutrition to your sleep, to prioritizing what your relationships look like, to how you breathe and how you move. Those are all such critical elements that make up the whole balance of well-being. Wellness is, it's not a destination, it's a way of being. And I believe that you can profoundly change your life simply with self-care and learning how to manage that energy.
Thank you so much, Martin. 2 minutes, Martin.
Yeah, you got it. Meditation is one of the most valuable things that introduced my life years ago. I got a transcendental meditation and took it. Before that, I would have to swim about a mile in college to be able to focus at all. This was pre-Ritalin or anything else, but I was very high strung. And I did a 10-day noble sit, which actually almost killed me in a humorous way. And what I learned about meditation was this idea of just emptying your mind is pretty ridiculous for most of us Westerners. That's something that happens about 40 years after someone's doing this. That it was really about sitting and breathing and witnessing my existence. And when I did the 10-day noble sit, my friend was a veteran who meditation helped him tremendously with his own PTSD from Vietnam. He would do like 30-day sits. And he told me this might be the most confrontive weekend, 10 days you ever have. And he was right. Because when I sat there in this intense meditation, many hours a day, noise comes up. And that's part of it. And it's really important to know that for people doing meditation, just sitting still and witnessing your existence maybe you're breathing or focusing on your center of balance, it's okay that it's disruptive and let it go and come back to it. My best friend one time said, when I meditate on a regular basis, it profoundly improves my life. That's why I stopped. And that describes the human condition tremendously. And so it's easy for me to forget and go, oh, I have this wonderful tool of meditation. And that there is a difference between walking and doing others. To just sit upright, breathe, and witness your existence is very, it's okay, that might only take a few minutes, but it's very profound. So that's what I'm going to share around, it's being with yourself. And you might need permission to just start with a few minutes.
Doreen, you got 1 minute. Thank you, Mark.
Well, on my journey, I have learned to meditate and be mindful. And in doing that, I have learned how to listen to my body, what my body is doing and how I am that day, and how to calm myself in situations. A couple of years ago, you would have never got me up here. Okay. A lot of meditating. And I do my meditation in the harbor on a rock by myself.
I love it.
Nature.
I so appreciate it. What I want to do, because we were given until noon, and it's almost noon time now, I want to give everybody here on the panel an opportunity to talk about what you're doing professionally now to help people. And just like we began, Tammy, I'm going to start with you and we come all the way to Mark. So you can just talk for about a minute or a minute and a half about how you help people.
How I help people is, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a minister here at Unity of the Triangle. And part of my role is doing community involvement and small groups. And as part of that, I go into the community and work with people who are, whether they are suffering or dealing with homelessness, or whatever kind of transitional living that they are doing. And I work with getting volunteers going out into the community. And then also small groups is a really important part of the work that I do here because it establishes connection between people. And you can be in a large environment and not necessarily feel connected. But when you get into a smaller group, I work with women's groups, LGBTQ+, millennials, men's groups. And it is a way for people to connect, build those bonds, and to be able to share their stories. And that is how I help people.
Well, professionally, I'm not working right now. I'm taking care of my mother and living in a community that's not really mine. But in doing that, I am advocating for those people. I bring them information that they don't have. I try to help them further their lives and have the conversations like we're having today and getting that information to them on how they can get help.
Thank you. Rick? 1 minute, Rick.
Yeah, so I wrote a book called Progressive Navigation System, which is a guidebook to get back to the intrinsic design, inherent design of us all, the hope, the honesty, omnipotence, pure love lessons. We all have that. So I coach that. I've also started an We Care Partnerships Network with my great friends Don and Shay. We are going to carry this thing nationwide to help businesses to become more community conscious.
Wait a second. What did I, don't I forget that?
I mean, yeah, Keith. Keith is a very important part of that story. Excuse me, my friend.
It's okay.
So there's that. And the latest development is something called Hope Gate Homes. And that is where we're going to be working together to purchase properties, to get people into affordable homes, and then to take other kinds of properties and develop communities of hope. That is the ultimate goal for us, is to get people into a space where they can be safe, where they can express themselves, and where they can get the help they need to be able to stand on their own 2 feet.
Thank you. Where did the wrong? What? Oh, okay, she's good. It's still my fault.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Should go
wrong
like
way. So we have an organization, nonprofit organization called In Our Shoes. We help young adults transitioning out of foster care. My husband and I currently have 6 young adults in our home, and we have multiple in the community. Jim and I have been married 7 years, and we've had 23 kids in the home in that 7 years. He's amazing. He's amazing that he joined my journey. He's standing right there, sitting right out there.
Wow.
We also help to build tools for transition. We're in the process of building teams in the community to help address housing, vocation, education, healthcare, financial, social, and I have one more and I can't think of what it is, but we've got 7 areas that we're building teams to help address the challenges that this young adult population faces and how we can come together as a community to help support them. And I'm also speaking at organizations about how we can support and trying to raise awareness around this population because they're often misunderstood. And that's all around my book, When Our Love Is Not Enough.
Thank you.
I'm in private practice. I see about 7 people a day. And this is how I help people directly, either people who are suicidal or people who are heading in that direction, or people who've just come out of the hospital. I'm also a keynote speaker. I do workshops. I do webinars to help spread this message. One of the things that I bring to the table that is unique to mental health professionals is I bring about peaceful conflict resolution and have specific strategies for dealing with dominance behavior and bullying that isn't just a passive kind of approach, a hopeful kind of approach, but actual real life steps you can take to make a difference in situations that are very difficult to deal with. I also have a strong background in critical incident stress debriefings, dealing with people who have been involved in things like bank robberies, or there was a shooting at work, or something like that. There are different things in the community. So these are the ways I like to reach out and help others and bring a skill set that is research-based to helping others around me.
Thank you.
I am the founder and executive director for Liberty Oaks. Our website is libertyoaksnc, as in North Carolina.com. We are a 501c3 that I started in 2023 with the idea that I want to bring people, especially individuals and corporate groups, out to our property and have classes and workshops taught by local professionals, similar to you, to support their workforce and especially frontline employees in health and wellness, all aspects, everything from leadership and communication to physical health to mental health and spirituality to financial health, everything, what we call the 8 dimensions of wellness. The way that we are going to be giving back is to donating some proceeds to youth and teens, since they are the next generation who is living through all this. And by doing all this, I found companies can absolutely improve productivity, reduce turnover, and create a lasting culture of care for their employees. And I see that it is needed more than ever in today's world. So libertyoaksnc.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin.
They started the timer for you, just so you know.
I help individuals and small businesses have a fierce competitive advantage in the marketplace, in their life, online and offline, as a success coach. I do training and public speaking and professional speaking. That's my livelihood. I have a gift in hearing the greatest resource an individual has and helping them become more effective. I'm an advocate of play your strengths, not just improve your weaknesses. And I've been doing this since I left IBM in '95. I have about 18,000 pages of index content on Google, so you can learn about me by Googling my name. My passion on the side is the issue of men's issues, so I want to honor Tom Golden with two of his many books. One is The Way Men Heal, and the other, I'll put it up here. The Way Men Heal, a must read. Remember, it's a pathway. We usually start with depression that then leads to suicide, and I'm not certain that's the only path, but we want to stop all paths. Highly recommend it. And then for any mothers who want to relate to their sons, helping mothers be closer to their sons. Because in 12 years of leading the men's discussion group, I'd have mothers call me, go, what should I do? What should I do? What should I do? And I will share my first book, but it's dense, is Finding Our Fire. It's over 12 years of leading the men's discussion group. And then my one coming out in 2025 is Taboo, the Lost Codes of Men. If men need socialization to mature, what is that components? And I propose we've pretty much gutted our society of almost all of them. And if you look at prisons, they're filled with men which have been initiated into the dark side because we don't offer the other. So exciting to be.
So I want to thank everybody for joining us in person and virtually. Of course, I want to thank all of my panel members. It's been a blessing to get to know you even briefly. With the Envision Speaker Series, as the host of the Envision Speaker Series, it is my vision to bring these conversations with the help of Cheyenne, her husband Don, and of course Coach Rick, across the nation, hopefully across the world, because this is something that is needed. It's desperately needed. Thank you all.
Yeah, and good job.
Y'all are an awesome group. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It has been amazing to listen to everybody's stories. I just wanted to make sure that I let everybody know about the other pieces of this puzzle, because this is we're really working to lay the groundwork for this to not just be a one-day event and that's it. Because we know that this problem is big. It needs a lot of attention. We're working on building a localized team here. We want to build localized teams across the country. So please do know, we do have a flyer in the lobby. If you haven't picked one up, please do. And in that flyer, across the hall here in the fellowship hall is what we're calling the wellness experience. And we encourage everybody to sit and speak with these incredible people that we have assembled over there, because there's so many ways that we can become empowered to be able to take more control over our physical health, our mental health, our emotional health, and our spiritual health. And these folks can give people ideas on how to do that. There is a listing here of 6 little brief seminar workshops that are going to go on in the classroom that is just off the fellowship hall. When you walk in there, it's towards the back on the right. And we took the pre-K classroom and turned it into an adult classroom for this afternoon. So please take a look at that schedule. And, our very first one up is Miss Nina Del Vecchia. And if there's anybody here who's feeling any kind of, emotional stuff as a result of what's been the conversation here, she's going to do kind of a post-panel group discussion. And it's all about whatever you guys want to talk about. She is a grief and resilience coach. And so she will kick us off at noon. And then we've got, all kinds of incredible people who will be in that room. So pick up your form and take a look at, or the flyer and take a look. And then I encourage everybody to look at the back of that sheet as well, because 4:30 to 6:30 this afternoon, we are going to take over the flowers field at Dorothea Dix Park. And this is an important part of this event as well. You've heard people talk about energy in different ways. And, we are energetic. If somebody has a heart attack, they use electricity to bring us back. So we are energetic, electrical type beings. And we're wanting to build the energy up there at Dix Park. And, you've heard people say, we're inviting God back into the society. We want help. We're asking for help. Teach us, what do we need to do to be able to save more people? And how do we build facilities like what Stephanie's building? How do we get these done? And so everybody can play a role. If you're just a prayer warrior, great, come and be a prayer warrior. But we are going to have a electronic form that people can fill out and say, you know what, I have this kind of skill set, I have this kind of talent, I could help out here, I could help out there. Because that's the biggest problem we've got right now is too many people are sitting in silos with these incredible ideas, like you've heard some of them here, you'll hear more of them at the park tonight. We've got to come together, we've got to unite. That's why it's a beautiful thing. We're here at Unity today. So just want to make sure everybody is aware of all that, and there's all the information you need on these little flyers. So if you didn't get one, please pick one up in the lobby and let me know how I can be of service. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for all of you being here today.
Great.